10 famous Golden Age directors that all actors hated. Number 4 is shocking. Lights, camera, chaos. These Hollywood legends created cinematic masterpieces that defined the Golden Age, but behind those perfect shots and iconic scenes, pure terror for the actors who worked with them. From throwing tantrums to psychological warfare, these 10 Golden Age directors were notorious tyrants on set. They might have made movie magic, but they left a trail of traumatized stars in their wake. The stories about number 4 will absolutely make your jaw drop. You've seen their films, they're celebrated in film schools and immortalized with awards. But the dark truth about how these visionaries treated their actors has been whispered about in Hollywood for decades. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the industry's most notorious taskmasters. Get ready for the shocking behind-the-scenes drama that would make even their most intense movies seem tame by comparison. Before we dive into these infamous directors, let's talk about the Golden Age of Hollywood, a time when studios ruled supreme and directors wielded incredible power. From the 1920s through the 1960s, these filmmakers were essentially dictators of their movie sets. With studio backing and little oversight, they could make or break careers with a single word. Their behavior would never be tolerated today, but back then, actors had little choice but to endure whatever abuse came their way if they wanted to stay in the industry. Studio contracts meant actors couldn't just walk away, and speaking out could end a promising career before it truly began. So let's meet the tyrants who terrorized Tinseltown's biggest stars, starting with number 10. Number 10, Otto Preminger. Austrian-born Otto Preminger might be remembered for groundbreaking films like Laura and Anatomy of a Murder, but on set, he was known as Otto the Terrible. His volcanic temper was legendary in Hollywood, and his shouting matches became the stuff of industry lore. Preminger was notorious for his explosive outbursts aimed at anyone who dared make the smallest mistake. He wasn't just demanding, he was downright cruel. Actors reported being publicly humiliated for flubbing lines or missing marks. Linda Darnell, who worked with him on Fallen Angel, once said working with Preminger was the most miserable experience of my professional life. Even the great Marilyn Monroe wasn't spared his wrath during the filming of River of No Return, where witnesses report she left the set in tears multiple times. But let's not pretend everything was fine. While his films received critical acclaim, Preminger's brutal directing style left emotional scars on many actors. He believed terror was a motivational tool, and he wielded it with frightening precision. Despite being feared and loathed by most who worked with him, studios kept hiring him because his films made money, and in Hollywood, the bottom line always trumped actor welfare. Number 9. Michael Curtiz. Known for directing classics like Casablanca and Mildred Pierce, Hungarian-born Michael Curtiz had a reputation for being utterly ruthless in pursuit of the perfect shot. Stories about his callous disregard for actor safety have become Hollywood legend. During the filming of Noah's Ark in 1928, Curtiz ordered the release of 600,000 gallons of water for a flood scene without warning the extras, resulting in injuries and near drownings. 3 extras reportedly drowned, though studio records were conveniently lost regarding this incident. Curtiz's response: "They're only extras." Errol Flynn, who worked with Curtiz on multiple films including The Adventures of Robin Hood, absolutely despised him. Flynn claimed Curtiz's broken English meant he could conveniently misunderstand safety concerns. When actors complained about dangerous stunts, Curtiz would simply pretend not to understand their objections. His temper was just as dangerous as his stunts. Bette Davis called him a monster after working with him on 20,000 Years in Sing Sing, while other actors reported being pushed to physical exhaustion or berated until they broke down in tears. Yet Curtiz continued working because his films were box office gold, cementing his reputation as a director who got results, no matter the human cost. Number 8. Alfred Hitchcock. The master of suspense was also a master of psychological torture, particularly toward his leading ladies. While Hitchcock's brilliance is undeniable, his treatment of actresses reveals a disturbing pattern of obsession and cruelty. His most notorious victim was Tippi Hedren during the filming of The Birds. When Hedren rejected his advances, Hitchcock reportedly said he would ruin her career. He then subjected her to 5 days of having live birds thrown at her for the film's attic scene, despite promises that mechanical birds would be used. Hedren suffered cuts, exhaustion, and a nervous breakdown. When she tried to escape her contract after this treatment, Hitchcock held her to it while refusing to use her in films, effectively ending her promising career. But Hitchcock's controlling behavior wasn't limited to Hedren. Janet Leigh was forced to film the infamous shower scene in Psycho for a week, standing in cold water until she was shivering and traumatized. Kim Novak, Grace Kelly, and Vera Miles all reported uncomfortable experiences with his controlling behavior. Behind that that iconic silhouette and dry wit was a man who used his power to dominate, control, and punish women who resisted him. Yet for decades, this behavior was dismissed as eccentricity or the price of genius, while his actresses suffered in silence. Number 7. John Ford. A 6-time Oscar winner renowned for westerns like The Searchers and Stagecoach, John Ford was equally famous for his brutal treatment of actors. Even the biggest stars weren't safe from his wrath. Ford's preferred method of directing was humiliation. He would publicly ridicule actors in front of the entire cast and crew, reducing grown men to tears. Henry Fonda, despite starring in some of Ford's greatest films, described working with him as walking through a minefield. You never knew when Ford would explode. His cruelty toward John Wayne is particularly well documented. Before Wayne became a star, Ford would repeatedly single him out for savage criticism. During the filming of Stagecoach, Ford would mock Wayne's acting abilities so harshly that other cast members felt uncomfortable. Wayne later admitted that working with Ford was like walking into daily psychological warfare. Even the great Katharine Hepburn wasn't immune. During Mary of Scotland, Ford deliberately kept Hepburn waiting for hours in a heavy costume under hot lights, seemingly just to break her spirit. When actors complained or stood up to him, they were often fired on the spot or blacklisted from future Ford productions. What made Ford's abuse so insidious was its unpredictability. He could be charming one moment and viciously cruel the next, keeping his actors in a constant state of anxiety. Yet they continued to work with him because a John Ford film could make your career if you survived the experience. Number 6. Stanley Kubrick. While Kubrick's career extended beyond the traditional golden age, he got his start in that era and exemplified the tyrannical director archetype. His perfectionism bordered on pathological, with actors often pushed to mental breaking points. The stories from The Shining are legendary. Kubrick forced Shelley Duvall to perform the baseball bat scene 127 times, still holding the record for most takes of a single scene with dialogue. By the end, Duvall was physically ill from stress, dehydrated from crying, and losing her hair. Her portrayal of terror wasn't acting, it was real psychological distress. Jack Nicholson eventually stopped answering his phone because he couldn't bear being called back for more takes. When Malcolm McDowell's eyes were damaged during A Clockwork Orange from the clamps holding his eyes open, Kubrick simply continued filming. Kubrick's shoots were marathon sessions of psychological endurance. He made Tom Cruise reshoot a simple scene of walking through a door 95 times for Eyes Wide Shut. The film took 400 days to shoot, a record for a continuous production, leaving the entire cast exhausted and demoralized. What made Kubrick's approach particularly difficult was his refusal to explain what he wanted. Actors reported never knowing if they were doing well or poorly. They just had to keep performing the same scenes dozens, sometimes hundreds of times until Kubrick was satisfied. This deliberate technique kept actors in a constant state of insecurity and desperate to please. Number 5. Fritz Lang. The creator of masterpieces like Metropolis and M, German director Fritz Lang had a reputation for tyranny that followed him from Europe to Hollywood. His sets were described as dictatorships, where actors lived in constant fear. Lang's perfectionism manifested as cruelty. During Metropolis, actress Brigitte Helm was cut and bruised from the tight metal robot costume she wore for hours without breaks. In a scene where children were rescued from a flood, Lang kept the young actors in cold water for so long that several became ill with pneumonia. When Lang came to America, his behavior didn't improve. On the set of Western Union, Lang allegedly threw actor Robert Young down a flight of stairs to get a more realistic look of pain. Marlene Dietrich called him the most cruel director I've ever worked with after their collaboration on Rancho Notorious. Peter Lorre, who worked with Lang on M, described him as tyrannical, insane with power. Lang would deliberately terrify his actors to get authentic fear reactions, sometimes firing guns without warning behind them during filming. He was known to slap actors who displeased him and would often film scenes of physical discomfort until actors were genuinely suffering. Despite his artistic brilliance, Lang's sets were places of fear and intimidation, where actor welfare meant nothing compared to his artistic vision. Many refused to work with him twice, regardless of the prestige his films offered. Number 4, David O. Selznick. Now we arrive at number 4, and trust me, these stories are truly shocking. While primarily known as a producer, Selznick frequently took over directing duties on his productions, most famously on Gone with the Wind, after firing multiple directors. His tyrannical behavior reached legendary status, particularly during the making of this classic film. Selznick's abuse of power was extraordinary even by Golden Age standards. He kept the entire cast and crew of Gone with the Wind working for days without sleep, sustained by doctor-administered Benzedrine, amphetamines. These marathon sessions became known as Selznick's Folly, with actors literally collapsing on set from exhaustion. Vivian Leigh was perhaps his most famous victim. Already fragile emotionally, Leigh was pushed to complete mental breakdown by Selznick's demands. He forced her to reshoot the scene where she runs through the fog-shrouded streets of Atlanta 23 times in one day while wearing a heavy costume in stifling heat. When she complained of exhaustion, he threatened to replace her. By the end of production, Leigh was having full emotional breakdowns between takes. Clark Gable nearly quit the film after Selznick kept him on set for 3 days straight during the burning of Atlanta sequence. Olivia de Havilland reported that Selznick would deliberately pit actors against each other, telling each different things about their performances to create real tension and jealousy on screen. Perhaps most disturbing were Selznick's infamous memo attacks. He would bombard actors and crew with rambling, abusive notes, sometimes 20 to 30 pages long, criticizing every aspect of their performance or work. These memo onslaughts often arrived in the middle of the night, ensuring no one got proper rest. When actress Anne Rutherford requested a day off to attend her sister's wedding, Selznick not only refused but threatened to blacklist her in Hollywood if she missed filming. He routinely reduced actresses to tears, including a teenage Shirley Temple during Since You Went Away, who described working with him as psychological torture. What makes Selznick truly shocking was his calculation. Unlike directors who lost their tempers, Selznick's abuse was methodical and strategic, designed to break people down so they would be too exhausted to resist his demands. Yet, Gone with the Wind remains celebrated, while the human cost of its creation is often forgotten. Number 3. Josef von Sternberg. The man who discovered Marlene Dietrich and directed classics like The Blue Angel was notorious for his sadistic treatment of actors, including Dietrich herself, despite their famous partnership. Von Sternberg's directing method involved systematically breaking down actors' confidence. He would refuse to speak directly to performers he disliked, giving them direction through assistants as if they weren't worthy of his attention. During The Devil is a Woman, he forced Dietrich to wear a painfully heavy headdress for hours, causing her neck injuries that troubled her for years. His cruelty toward actors he considered beneath him was particularly vicious. While filming The Salvation Hunters, he made Georgia Hale repeatedly crawl through actual mud until she was sobbing, simply because he felt her suffering would look authentic on camera. When filming An American Tragedy, he deliberately humiliated Phillips Holmes in front of the entire crew until the young actor broke down. Von Sternberg was known for his one more take torture, telling actors they were finished, allowing them to remove complicated makeup or costumes, then immediately demanding they suit up again for another take. This psychological game was designed to crush spirits and assert his dominance. Even Gary Cooper, not known for complaining, called working with von Sternberg the most degrading experience of my professional life after their collaboration on Morocco. Cooper claimed the director would whisper insults in his ear right before calling action to keep him off balance and insecure. Despite creating some of cinema's most visually stunning works, von Sternberg left a trail of traumatized actors who described his sets as places of deliberate psychological torture disguised as artistic direction. Number 2. Erich von Stroheim. Known as the man you love to hate, von Stroheim's on-screen persona as a villainous Prussian officer wasn't far from his real directing style. His tyrannical behavior was so extreme that it eventually ended his directing career. Von Stroheim's perfectionism crossed into sadism. During Greed, he forced actors to film in Death Valley in summer with temperatures reaching 120 degrees. Zasu Pitts and Gibson Gowland were made to repeat physically grueling scenes until they were near collapse. When an elderly actor fainted from heat exhaustion, von Stroheim reportedly stepped over him and continued directing. His cruelty was methodical. He would deliberately cast actors who disliked each other in romantic scenes, then film for hours until their mutual hatred created a tense energy on screen. During The Merry Widow, he reduced Mae Murray to tears almost daily with his verbal abuse, calling her stupid and worthless in front of the entire cast. Von Stroheim would often force actors to wear uncomfortable costumes for unnecessarily long periods. For Foolish Wives, He made Miss DuPont wear a tightly corseted dress for so many hours that she fainted multiple times. Rather than showing concern, he berated her for delaying production. Perhaps most disturbing was his treatment of extras. On The Wedding March, he reportedly threw real food at extras playing beggars and found their desperate scramble for it amusing. He would keep hundreds of extras in uncomfortable positions for hours while he perfected details that would never be visible on camera. Von Stroheim's behavior was so extreme that MGM eventually refused to let him direct, despite his artistic brilliance. His 10-hour cut of Greed might be a lost masterpiece, but the human suffering required to create it reveals the dark side of his genius. Number 1. Cecil B. DeMille. The grandiose filmmaker behind epics like The Ten Commandments and Cleopatra tops our list for his combination of massive power and breathtaking disregard for actor safety and dignity. DeMille's enormous productions were legendary for their dangerous conditions. During the parting of the Red Sea sequence in the 1923 version of The Ten Commandments, he released tons of water on unsuspecting extras, resulting in numerous injuries. When informed that people were in danger, he famously replied, "So are the Israelites." For the 1956 remake, things hadn't improved much. During the Exodus scenes filmed in the Sinai Desert, extras suffered from heat stroke and dehydration in 120-degree temperatures. When crew members begged to provide more water to suffering extras, DeMille reportedly said, "They're getting paid to suffer." His psychological cruelty matched his physical demands. DeMille would deliberately humiliate actors in front of hundreds of cast and crew members. Victor Mature was repeatedly berated so severely during Samson and Delilah that he nearly quit the industry altogether. DeMille would use a megaphone to publicly criticize performers, ensuring maximum embarrassment. Actress Agnes DeMille, his niece, described his directing method as treating actors like cattle. He would refer to performers by number rather than name on his largest productions, stripping them of basic dignity. When legendary actor Henry Wilcoxon expressed concern about a dangerous chariot scene in The Crusades, DeMille forced him to perform it anyway, resulting in injuries that hospitalized him for weeks. Perhaps most revealing about DeMille was his habit of filming real suffering without concern. For The Greatest Show on Earth, he captured footage of an actual train wreck, incorporating genuine accidents and injuries into his finished film. For the crucifixion scenes in The King of Kings, he had extras nailed into their crosses through their costumes, not flesh, and left hanging painfully for hours. What makes DeMille the worst offender is the sheer scale of his abuse. While other directors terrorized dozens of actors, DeMille's enormous productions meant thousands experienced his callous disregard for human dignity and safety. Yet his films were celebrated as achievements, while the suffering behind them was conveniently forgotten. These weren't just tough bosses having bad days. These directors systematically abused their power, leaving psychological and sometimes physical scars on countless actors. Hear me out. This wasn't about artistic excellence. It was about control and dominance disguised as perfectionism. In some cases, like Hitchcock's treatment of Tippi Hedren or Kubrick's breaking of Shelley Duvall, we're talking about deliberate psychological torture that would result in lawsuits and criminal charges in today's film industry. The damage didn't stop when filming ended. Many actors suffered long-term trauma from these experiences. Actresses like Hedren saw promising careers destroyed for standing up to abuse. Others developed anxiety disorders and substance abuse problems to cope with the stress these directors inflicted. The human cost behind these cinematic masterpieces was enormous and largely hidden from the public who celebrated these genius filmmakers. So why do we still celebrate these directors despite their appalling behavior? I think it forces us to confront an uncomfortable question about separating art from artist. These men created undeniable masterpieces that shaped cinema history, but they did so through methods that were cruel and sometimes dangerous. Hollywood has thankfully evolved. The tyrannical behavior these directors got away with wouldn't be tolerated on modern sets where actors have unions, legal protections, and the power of social media to expose abuse. But we shouldn't forget the suffering that went into creating the classics we still celebrate today. I believe we can appreciate these films while acknowledging the troubling circumstances of their creation. Understanding this dark side of Hollywood history helps us recognize and prevent similar abuse in the entertainment industry today. The genius of these directors doesn't excuse their cruelty, but examining both aspects gives us a more complete picture of cinema history. And that wraps up our look at the Golden Age directors with the worst reputations among actors. Their films may have been revolutionary, but their directing methods left trails of traumatized performers in their wake. It's a reminder that behind the glamour and artistry of classic Hollywood often lurked a darker reality for those who brought these visions to life. If you enjoyed this glimpse behind the curtain of cinema history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content exploring Hollywood's golden era. I'm curious, did any of these directors surprise you, or do you think their artistic contributions outweigh their notorious on-set behavior? Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore more hidden stories from classic Hollywood.